One of my favorite podcasts we've done is talking about march style, and it made me think that a lot of people just don't understand. There's actually a style to a lot of what goes on in a march, and I think when we talked about it, we were talking about it from a concert point of view, concert band setting. But when you and I were young, way back before dirt, that was actually what we did on the marching field as well. And we had to do that kind of stylistic stuff.
Mhm.
We've kind of evolved, though, in the world of marching. And, I know there's going to be people that fall down on both sides or straddle the fence over visual versus music versus all the things that I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know that I was in good enough physical shape to do some of the things I see people doing on marching field now.
Oh yeah.
But all that is to say, it strikes me that, beyond the musical component of what's going on, there's probably a lot more that goes into preparing for a marching show that probably needs to start way earlier than August. And I'm being facetious when I say it, but I'm making a point.
Yeah, and some of these programs, it'll blow your mind. Some of them work on their show design a full year before that fall. So they're one show ahead. Think about that.
They're already thinking that far, yeah.
They're thinking 2027 right now. They're designing their 2027 show because 26 is already in the box. It's ready to roll for summer band. So some are that far ahead. I'm not saying I never did that. I had an in-house composer named Luke McMillan. So,
I'm here to say, by the same token, your in-house composer, Luke McMillan, who now does this for a living, is probably already a year or two ahead designing shows for people to consider a year ahead of next year.
Well, yeah, I think he was 2 years ahead on my stuff. And he'd say, "What do you want to do for next year?" And I'd always go, "I don't know, whatever you want to write."
Next year?
Yeah. So just whatever you want to write, Luke, because I found that like all creative souls, if you give them less boundaries, they're more creative. If you give them lots of boundaries and rules, that they get tied in. It's like, well, Mike wanted this and he wanted that. It's like, man, just do what you do, man. So you write incredible music, and still to this day writes incredible music, and will for decades. But it was always great. But this one is going to be a podcast that Stephen Cox, if you're out there listening, please go ahead and turn it off at this moment, because this is going to make you cringe like no one else. Because my friend Stephen,
we love you, Stephen.
Well, we love Stephen, and he's a very much, he's not into the competitive side of bands, and I respect that greatly. Yeah. But this is, I'm going right to the artery of what are things we can do in our show design that can garner us more points when we're at area marching, not region marching, because that's a different animal than area marching and state marching. So here we go, my friend. Let's
here we go. Buckle up.
Okay. So show design notes. These are things that are still, even at this time when you're listening to this podcast, some things can still be changed, and lots of things can still be changed. But I want you to understand some things about, in my opinion, how things are rewarded points and things are not given points. Okay. Flute soloists and choirs are highly rewarded in points.
Huh. That's fact.
That's fact. I mean, I say fact. It's fact as far as my opinion, as whatever that means. You know what I mean? But I've seen it in action.
Invite a lawsuit.
Yeah, I've seen it in action. You can have a trumpet trio playing something, and it will not be given the same amount of points as a flute soloist playing a beautiful solo on an alto flute or whatever.
Do you have any reasoning for that?
I think it just inherently, it's more musical. Because I always laughingly tell people, said, the woodwinds have it so easy. They have these things called musical instruments. And they're designed to be musical. And said, we as brass players have plumbing with a bell and a mouthpiece. And they're telling us to be just as musical with our piece of PVC plumbing.
That's great.
And there's a lot of truth to that, isn't there, Derek? That
sure.
Primitive bugly looking thing, and they say,
which is verifiable by taking a garden hose, sticking a mouthpiece in the end of it, and you can make musical notes.
My grandson, he calls it his Texas Tech trumpet, but it's like a P-bone, but it's a trumpet. It's red and black. I can put my Dennis Wick mouthpiece in that thing, and I can make it sound pretty dang good. And it's plastic. It doesn't sound as good as my box Strad. It doesn't. but it's pretty passable. I can play it just as
It's
well.
functional.
And it's very functional. And if I destroy it, it's only $110 on Amazon, instead of 5,000 from whatever, but I still love my box.
Every music retailer listening just went, oh,
yeah. But it's yeah, stop. Yeah, sorry about that. Mr. Mrs. Tarpley, whatever. But yeah, it's very passable. But I think that's where it lies in and plus, I think woodwinds are still the bright shiny penny in marching band, because for so many years they were like hidden. They were just like they just marched and we never heard them except for an obligatory they do some little woodwind flourish, and then the brass would come back in and just waylay the stands with and
let me ask you this: do you think is there an element of, wow, I wasn't expecting that?
Yeah,
we expect the trumpets to come out and blow our faces off.
Yeah,
but I wasn't expecting that pretty little. If you mic it right and do all the things right, there's an episode for that.
Stage it correctly, all that kind of stuff. So flute soloists and choirs, I think, are the most highly rewarded. And then we get into clarinets. Saxophones are almost too much like brass. And unless you have just an incredible soloist on saxophone, which is awesome. One that I heard.
There's one this last year that was fantastic. That soprano sax player
at Canyon.
Trying to remember, it was yeah, I was just like, wow.
And I recruited that young man. He's in the Skywriters this year.
Woohoo!
Yeah, so we were excited. We got five kids from Canyon, one woodwind, 3 brass, and 1 guard kid. So we got 5 of those Canyon kids. So Eric Rath, thank you for your support of the Skywriters. And one of them's his daughter. The guard kid's his daughter. And so McKinley's going to do a great job for us. But yeah, that's so when I heard him at state marching, at area marching, I was doing tabulations. As being on the board of directors for the Skywriters, I go, it's like an NIL kind of thing. I'm getting that boy. So I immediately started making contact. I was like Nick Saban, can I meet your parents? We will take care of you. So that kid, So that was highly rewarded because they started the show with Rite of Spring with this beautiful soprano sax solo by this kid. And guard is nothing but added reward. They are added reward. There's very little a guard can do that will take away points in a show. Think about that for a second. So do not be afraid out there to add a guard. It doesn't even have to be a great guard. Just find 4 kids that are willing to do it in a 2A school. And they don't even have to be in band. There's a lot of guards that the kids are not instrumentalists. They just come in and they just do guard, and then they're like music librarians the second semester, or they take another class, So don't be afraid to utilize your guard in that respect, because they just add so much to the program. And we get into this old souls versus the new marching arts kind of thing, If you're retired and you're an old soul, that's fine. You talk crap all you want to about, this is not really marching band. You go for it. You live your life. I respect that. You've done your thing. But if you're right now and you want to be in area marching and you want to try to advance to state marching and you want to try to do something damaging down there to do well in the medalist, you'd better adopt this stuff. It's not like a salmon swimming upstream. You have no hope at all. In fact, there was a band a few years back, about 20 years ago. They 1A band played King March Trios at the state marching contest. They made it all the way to state. One of the critiques from one of the judges was this music is not appropriate for a marching contest.
It's kind of my opening salvo there.
Yeah. So if you want to see where things have gone, that was 20 years ago. So it's gone further than that. So it is what it is. So going on with this.
But to take it away from being personal about the music choices, blah, blah, blah. It's just like my dad, God love him. Cell phones became popular, or even wall phones. He was like, no, that's not a phone. A phone's a black thing that sits on a desk. That's the only thing I consider a phone. The rest of the world's talking on cell phone, Dad.
Yeah.
So things you can argue with it, you can rail against it, but society is going to move forward.
Yeah. And the
music world is going to move forward.
Yeah. And even within the music world, try to explain to a junior high kid what a CD is. Try to explain.
Now, my son-in-law tells me they're coming back, but
but also try to explain to them that we used to buy music.
Explain dial-up.
Yeah. So and I'm not saying the old way was better, because it wasn't. The new way is better, but you're right. We're in a resurgence of people want something tangible to hold in their hands. They want
Right.
liner notes and they want LPs, but yeah, it's
But not on the marching field.
not on the marching field. We've got to, if you want to compete, you've got to evolve. Okay. Brass can get rewarded. They can, but usually not as much as woodwinds. Ensembles, I think they should be rewarded more than soloists, but you need to make a balance there. Some of it needs to be ensemble features, whether a brass ensemble, woodwind section, small groupings. There's all those rules on how many you can mic. I think is it 13? I'm not. I'd have to look it up now because I'm not competing daily on this. But they're not usually rewarded as much as woodwinds. High brass and all brass in general, they get a lot more points if you can teach those kids how to double tongue. Okay. And we're in a new era of UIL marching. This is just my own conspiracy theory. For a long time, we were, everything should sound like a concert band on the field. We went through that for about 20 years. Everything should be a concert band on the field. They're starting to open up. They're starting DCI, and all the groups in DCI have kind of convinced them that as long as we have a balance of soloists and our woodwind players or whatever, there's times the brass, they can open the throttle, and we used to not have that, so there's times when you want to make it where it's, you can get after them with some sound, some articulation, whatever. But everything I've mentioned so far must adhere to the musical integrity of the show. There's an arc to the show, just like there's an arc to our life. You're born, you die. What happens in between? So the show is a beginning and end. What happens in between? So there's got to be an overall arc that rises to a certain point, which in a perfect world would be 2/3 of the way through your timing. The golden mean, you know what I mean? 2/3 through. And then inside that, it should be tiny arcs. So we try to graph out the shows to where every 30 to 40 seconds, something interesting, if not exciting, happens. It might be a drill move. Might be a rifle toss. It might be a trumpet soloist. It might be a percussion feature. It might be a front ensemble thing. Might be a battery thing. It might be a combination of three things. But every 45 seconds, something has to happen, because in today's society, we get bored very quickly. Okay.
Agreed.
And even at my age of 63, I'll be watching something on Netflix, and if I'm not engaged in the first 5 minutes, I'm going to something else. I'm not going to give time.
And I think that's
develop.
Important enough. I'm going to repeat it. Our attention span, even if we're watching a fantastic, beautiful piece of music, it's 30 seconds. You got to keep grabbing me.
Yeah, you got to give us something else to look at. My son, who is he's not a musician by trade, but he said something to me really interesting. We were talking about a certain band, and he goes, "Well, Dad, there's just no popcorn moments." I go, "What's a popcorn moment?" And I thought he meant like go buy popcorn, like the band's so bad, I'm just going to go buy popcorn. He goes, No. That's not what I'm talking about. When you're eating your popcorn and the band does something, you look at the person next to you and you quit eating your popcorn and you go, "Man, did you just see that?
That was cool." Yeah.
It's a popcorn moment. Did you see the guard do quads with their rifles? Did you hear that trumpet soloist with that double G at the end of the show? And it was played well with no hangover. You know what I mean? So those are popcorn moments. So I've used that expression a lot. Those are popcorn moments. We need to have a popcorn moment every 30 to 40 seconds in our show.
Cool.
And then, we need to have 8 to 12 bar phrases where we do these features, but there has to be frequent rest moments. And I call it recovery time. Lots of people call it recovery time. I make it sound like I made up that term.
Right.
I'm sorry. But there needs to be recovery time. You cannot have your trumpet section playing nonstop for 4 minutes.
Above the staff, right?
Yeah, or even in the staff. Oh my gosh. By the time you incorporate all the body movement and all the nachos they've just eaten, before the football game, they're dead to the world by the time you get to that point. So there's got to be a recovery time where their brain can think about the body movement and can think about what's happening and let the blood flow back into their lips. And so they can play again and just mentally recover as well as physically recover. Okay. And you've got to work on the mechanics of body movement. We're going to do, I don't think I've sprung this on you yet, Derek. We're going to do a podcast with Michael Munoz from Denver City. And he uses a resistance band. They're about 2 inches wide and they're in different sizes depending on the kid, but it's one resistance band. And he's devised a method in which he can do all his body movement and strengthen the core muscles in your arms and legs and neck and feet by using this resistance band on different places on your body. And he does it inside his band hall with his band. And I think it's no coincidence when I happened to judge them last year at Lubbock, they probably had the most fluid body movement of any 3A band I've ever seen. You know what I mean?
Cool.
And so this is going to be a really good one. It'll be more a YouTuber kind of thing because he's going to show us with his resistance band. So we'll do the audio portion, of course, but we're going to try to push people to the YouTube channel to say, hey, you need to see this man do this, because he's right. It started with him using these resistance bands for him as a weight loss mechanism. And you should see him, man. He looks like Chuck Norris now. And he was always pretty well in shape, but man, that man has toned up. And he said, it's all these resistance bands. So he's going to give us a podcast on that. So, I bring that up because that's the most common thing when band directors ask me after I see their state marching or their area marching or their region marching or whatever. And they say, what do I need to work on to make my band better? Most of the time, it's not musicality. Most of the time, it's not actually body movement. Most of the time, it's core body strength. The kids,
and I think I just said that at the beginning. I don't know that I could, without some training or without some physical coaching, have been able to do a lot of the things that I see kids do on a marching field these days.
That's pretty amazing.
So awesome. That'd be great.
Yeah. So we've got to give it time, just like we learn scales and just like we learn the Remington warm-up or whatever. It has to be there. And again, just to reiterate a point, in our music, the formula, not just drill-wise, but music-wise, the formula has to be accurate. It must be written where kids have recovery time. They've got to know that they're going to do this woodwind feature for 32 counts, and then they've got 32 counts of motion where they're going to do body movement and they're going to move, and it's going to be in 3 levels of dimension where they stage something, and then they do another woodwind feature. They've got to have that recovery time where their brain can click back and forth, because I think it's important to realize that the human brain can only think of one thing at any given moment. It's impossible to consciously think of 2 things at exactly the same time. Just really intelligent people are good at switching back and forth really quickly. Not all our kids are at that level. Some of them, you've got to give them that mechanism of, okay, we've got 16 counts. Now we're going to do body motion. Now you don't have to worry about playing your horn right here. Now we're going to do our horn. You don't have to worry about doing your body. Does it make sense? So we give them that
absolutely
to where they can, where if they're not as highly mature in their thinking, because our frontal cortex doesn't develop until we're 25.
60.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say all men are basically 2-year-old toddlers. We just get trained how to cover
for their life.
Yeah. We just cover it up better. But in our heart, we see a 2-year-old and go, man, I miss those times. I wish I could act like a 2-year-old.
Seriously. Those were the days.
And just some things to kind of help out with as we get the kids working. We always want them to get a more sonorous big sound, right? That's
a big word.
No one wants to have this thin, wimpy sound. Thin is wonderful if you're trying to lose weight, but thin is not good if you're talking about tonal quality in a band. So I found that it's really good to get them in an enclosed environment for a while. Then, like
in the band hall
or gym, like Denver City. I remember critiquing Michael's band as a judge going, man, the drill just feels sort of cramped in a way. So I think we could spread this out more. His drill was written to fit inside his band hall. His band hall is amazing. Isn't that amazing that you do your entire UIL drill in your band hall with yard lines? So no matter what the weather, he can work. He even has 2 pickleball courts taped off on his band hall floor. The kids come and play pickleball after school. So there's nothing to do in Denver City. Sorry, Denver City. I spent the night there, and there's, the Square Dance Festival was over. There's nothing else to do. But they have pickleball courts taped off in their band hall. So you do what you got to do. So, you've got to be, then you get them inside that environment and get them to where they can play. But that's still not the key, is it? It's a step. It's part of the process. Then you take them outside and make them face a brick wall. And then they hear the slap back from the sound. Then you move them further from the brick wall, then further from the brick wall. Then you put them on the marching field, and then they hear it from the stands. But they've got to understand, they've got to memorize physically what it feels like to play at that volume with good sound. without necessarily hearing the rest of the band. Because we've all been there. We just forget quickly. If you're a trumpet player on the 35-yard line on the back hash, you can't hear anything but the people right around you and maybe a tuba player over to the side.
And you get no personal feedback. Yeah.
No feedback. You have no field monitor that feeds back sound to you. So you've got to physically, what does my face feel like? What are my ears going to hear out here? How does it feel to do? Can I taste that note? I'm not going to get any feedback of where that note's at on the horn. I just need to know that a G above the staff tastes like this. And I set my embouchure and I play. You have to have really good relative pitch. Okay. Percussion parts have to be creatively written to sound full. I've heard some really hard percussion books that just sound like crap. Yeah, has nothing to do with the music whatsoever. It's just rat-a-tat, a rat-a-tat, a rat-a-tat, rudiment, paradiddle, Swiss Army triplet, whatever. Who cares? It's just mindless white noise coming out of a battery.
It's not complimentary.
It's not complimentary to anything going on the field except for look at us, look at us, look at us. And that's the guard's job. The guard's job is to be look at us, look at us, look at us. That's what we want the guard to do. We do not want the battery or front ensemble to do that unless it's a specific tiny moment in the show. Otherwise, everyone's there to compliment everyone else in the deal. So,
but that's almost like a middle finger to the director and the rest of the band. If you write a book that you don't really care what anybody else is doing, this is going to be what we want to do.
Yeah, it's so complex, so we're just showing off what we can do, but it has nothing to do with what the rest of the band's doing. So take that into consideration, because there's still time to manipulate that drum book. Okay, part A and B breathing. Put in breath marks. Go figure. I call it a breathing plan. Make sure there's a breathing plan as you're playing, because so many times I'll go to work a band and I'll say, okay, now how are we doing this like 16 count where 4 whole notes tied together at the end of the opener? Who breathes where? And they'll look at you like, what? We take a breath when we run out of air. Okay, that's not really the smart way to do it. How about we plan? It's like me taking a trip in my car to Atlanta, Georgia and going, I think I'll just run out of gas and then I'll look for a gas station.
I played that game with my wife. She's not very appreciative.
Yeah. I didn't mean to touch a nerve there. Sharon is correct. That's really stupid. When you get to a quarter,
I think we can make it.
When you get to a quarter tank, it's pull over and fill up.
Time.
So just kind of have a breathing plan. Keys. And now this is probably too late at this point to do it, but just make sure that it's nothing outside the keys that your band is used to playing in. You're not going to teach them how to play in the key of concert C or the key of concert B within the key of C sharp on trumpet. That's not going to be a very worthwhile process when we could have just put them in B flat instead of B natural. And there's directors who do that, and I don't know why. I don't know why sometimes, really smart composers like Luke McMillan don't do that. They've custom fit the show to that band. If the band has that ability, let's use it, because we get that really bright sonority if we're in a brighter key,
Right.
But if the band can't do it easily, then don't mess with it. Keep the parts written.
Let's pull back to our coachable episode. It's on you if you are forcing people to do things that A, they don't know how to do, or B, they're just not at that comfortable place in their journey yet. You got to make it something that they can go, hey, we can be successful with this.
And in football season, marching season, you don't have time to teach the key of concert B.
Exactly.
Now, that better have happened in 8th grade if you're going to do it in 9th grade. But otherwise, don't do it. Play what they can play.
It's just not that hard.
I've been a finalist in state marching in class 3A with a grade 2 marching show. Think about that. Okay. And now it wouldn't do anything in today's art form, because they've progressed to where now 3A bands sound like 5As did 15 years ago. We've progressed that far, but you've got to make sure it's done correctly in that manner. Make sure the parts are written in the middle range of the staff. If you look at that and you go, my trombones have trouble playing above a D on top of the staff, then if they have high Fs and E flats written all through the piece, that's going to be a problem. Okay. Because, you've got to find what I call the sweet spot on every section. And you should give that to the arranger, or if you're using, just standard stock arrangements, you've got to be willing to change some things in there. You can't change a whole lot when we get into copyright things, but I don't think any stock arrangement should be played verbatim. It should be tailor fit to your band to some extent.
Good word.
Yeah. And so, one thing I do in drill, try to avoid 90-degree slides where it's a full slide. They're going straight.
Talk to me like I'm ignorant.
Zone. Yeah, they're facing the front, and then you're telling them, okay, now point your toes at the end zone and march at a 90-degree slide and go straight towards the end zone while your bell's pointed straight forward. It can be done.
It's a really hard torque on your torso, right?
Yeah, and the younger your band is, some of my friends out there march 8th graders, some march 7th graders. You're really asking for trouble on that.
You just made that diaphragm really hard to use when you do that.
Yeah, just ask your drill writer to, instead of going straight across the field, can we go 16 counts to our left and end up 4 steps forward in the drill so it's not quite an angle? And I did that for years. And not one judge ever called me on it. They might have noticed it and didn't like it. I don't know. But they never once said, that's not a true 90-degree slide.
Right.
Because you can't hardly tell that from the press box. If it's only 4 steps forward, that's 2.5 yards. They move 2.5 yards forward as they move 16 steps across the field to their right. But it looks really, really good, because the hips are right and the shoulders are right. Okay. Try to keep the intervals consistent in the motion. If there's a lot of expansion in intervals and a lot of, contraction in intervals, that's good in a few moments. But if it happens over and over and over, we're in trouble. Okay. And just a few things to kind of throw in there when you're dealing with your drill writer, because that's where we're at right now with when this podcast comes out, more the drill writer.
Right.
Make sure you give them the right MP3 files. Make sure they're converted correctly for Highware. They'll give them like the one that they had in April, and then all of a sudden in May they changed all the show. Clearly numbered measures, and the percussion book aligns precisely with the wind book. I mean, that sounds common sense, but these are all problems that occur. Practice field limitations. The Denver City Band Hall.
Okay, tell me what that means. Okay, that makes sense.
If you have a drainage hole on your practice field on the 30-yard line, then you tell the drill writer, do not write front hash 30-yard line side 1, because that's a 10-foot across slimy drainage hole that has a grid on it, a grill, and we just can't march on that. So that's going to be like a prop written on your practice field when the drill writer's writing. Marcus High School has that, by the way. They're an amazing band, but they've got drainage holes on their field, and those are written into the drill.
One of my favorite examples, good friend Tim Edens, Hamilton, Texas, smaller town for those that don't know where Hamilton is. His marching field, from the near hash to the sideline is fairly level, but right about halfway across the field, we got a slope that goes.
Yeah,
I can't even tell you what the degree of that is, but I'm thinking Mr. Edens doesn't do a whole lot of riding for the backside of the field.
yeah, yeah. I can. That's a smart.
I'm talking steep.
Yeah, it's like a 18-wheeler would be concerned about burning out their brakes on that thing. So you've got to know, and that's part of the entry to hill country in Texas. So you got to understand what you're dealing with. Make sure to discuss with your drill writer guard equipment changes and transitions, so it doesn't look like just like kids throwing stuff to the sideline. It has to all look graceful.
That's a great thing. I'm glad you said that, because there have been several times I'm like, well, that's one way to do it.
That's one way to do it. Yeah, they'll just throw their crap, 15 yards to get off the field, and then they'll run up there spastic like and pick up some other piece of equipment. You're going, we probably could have done that a lot more gracefully if the drill writer would have kind of worked us into it. Make sure that all your materials you give to the drill writer are in one location. Is it a Google Drive? Is it a Dropbox for reference? And have people have edit functions on that, so we can just pull it up in one place. So your poor drill writer's not trying to access 3 different platforms to get it.
And I might say, name your files logically.
Yeah. Name them by the school name and when it was created. It's not, file 1416, this, it's like
whatever code you understand doesn't necessarily translate to your drill writer.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, and get a quick response. If you're lucky enough to have a guard person that helps out with your stuff, talk it over with them. Don't surprise them with your drill. So, oh, by the way, ta-da, here's your drill. We've already done the routine for the opener. Yeah, but it's different now. Don't do
And
that
now we're
to me.
doing a new one.
Yeah, we're doing a new one because talk about, because you wouldn't put up with that from your drill writer going, I know I've given you all the stuff and we've gone through the first 2 weeks of school, but I've decided to change the opener on you.
That's
We
right.
we wouldn't put up with that. Why should our guard person put up with that? And
How to win friends.
yeah, and make sure your numbers are correct. It's I put on my sheet the correct number of bass clarinets. This actually was a problem because I had like 6 bass clarinets, then 2 moved, and they wrote 2 extra spots. To me, it was 2 extra spots, but it's what I gave the drill writer. And so I'm like, well, we got to change that. And the drill writer's going, well, it'd been nice if you'd have told me, when you knew that, because I could have changed it in the second part of the show and in the closer, and we would have to redo the entire thing. Or now we're going to have to stick like 2 clarinets in there that aren't good marchers. And it's going to look really stupid because we have 2 soprano clarinets marching in the middle of the low reeds. You see what I'm saying? Just
I do.
be proactive, go to your drill writer. So those are just some things, things to think about. One more to just throw in there. Impact moments. If you're having trouble tuning impact moments or getting that band sonority you want, a real easy fix, take out the third of the chords. Just turn them into power chords.
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, just have the root and the fifth and just in select areas. We don't want to do that all the time because we lose tonality. But if it's a big hit,
And I think
that third is interpreted by everyone's brain.
right. Your reasoning is your brain will hear the third.
Yeah, your brain will hear it. Now, if you do that through the whole show, it's going to be a nightmare because it'll just sound like weird open fifths the whole show.
Basically, it's power chords on a
It's
guitar.
power chords on a guitar. Yeah. And, John Mackey uses that in his concert music a lot, and it's very effective. Use it in your marching show. Just if it's not working out, you're not getting the impact you want, the tuning's not quite lining up, it's the third of the chord that's screwing it up because the fifth and the root, the fifth has to be 2 cents sharp to sound right in minor and major. It's the third of the chord that shifts by 14 cents, so just get rid of it. Just say, okay,
Science is cool.
play the concert B flat, play a concert F, go. Just play it.
Great.
So that's my ideas of things to do.
Okay. I think that you have a book that you would actually recommend for some of this. Yes, no?
As far as
Talent code?
oh yeah, this is a really good one for my YouTube friends on the channel. The Talent Code. I'm holding
Cool.
Daniel Coyle, and it kind of talks about greatness isn't born, it's grown. And Derek and I've had this conversation. I think we're both right in different degrees. But I think we can take talent and grow it. And I think part of it is innate. Some people are more natural. I mean, my grandsons are brilliant. I mean, it's obvious,
Of course.
so they're brilliant. So, it's all very objective, in that regard. So, you can grow talent as well. So a lot of it goes into that as far as, how we design our show, how are we going to grow our talent? We're not going to teach all new musical ideas to make this happen, but we can grow our talent culturally through our band and incorporate the things we've done and make it easier for those performers. Oh my gosh, it's so hard.
So I'm going to tell you that this is, some things you tell me, I go, okay, some things I have to chew on them for a while.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you this brief story about the talent versus teaching aspect of it. And that's probably not the right way to say that. I think I will. And again, I laugh because I say this to myself when you're talking. I'll say in my head, I say, the things that bring us together are more than the things that tear us apart. We're closer on that than it probably feels like sometimes. But there's a young lady on YouTube. Her name's Ellen. She plays bass guitar. Ellen plays bass. If you want to check it out, it's pretty phenomenal. She's a tiny little girl.
Oh,
but she's a fantastic bass.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, little bitty kid.
And
well, she's
right,
not a
and
kid
she was well, she's still 12 or 13. She's still
okay.
But the things that she does, I mean, she's playing Jaco Pastorius. If you're a bass player, that means something to you. But if not,
yeah,
he's really good. But one thing to hear her say this, she's talking about how much she practiced. And she put it off like, yeah, I only practice probably 5 days a week. And the guy that was hosting her said, well, why only 5? He was being silly about it. He was like, that's a lot of practice. She goes, well, Saturdays I have this scheduled, and this other day, I just did something really strenuous the day before, typically. So I just try to keep those out. And he goes, well, why do you practice that much? She goes, because practice is what it's about.
Yeah.
Teaching and learning is what it's about. It doesn't matter if I think I'm talented. If I don't practice, it doesn't matter. It's not going to happen. It's not going to get recognized unless I put in the time and I seek out lessons and I seek out advice and I spend the time. And she says probably 2 to 3 hours a day. For a 13-year-old to practice that much on a bass is pretty phenomenal to me.
That is.
But I'm arguing for your stance that however talented you are or aren't, I have gotten to the point it doesn't really. I think less talented people, and again, I guess the argument is talent's not really a factor at all. But people that work harder are more successful.
Yes. It's
amazing how much luckier you are when you put in the time.
There's no doubt about that. Yeah. I'm glad you finally succumbed to my way of thinking. If it was all innate talent, there'd be no need for lessons.
And it translates so well to what we're talking about today, because everybody's like, well, I can't afford this, or I can't buy that, or I can't do this. But you can put in the time and you can figure it out. You can look at your group and say, we have this and we have this and we have this. And what can I do to make them successful? What can we work on so people aren't concentrating on what we don't have?
Yeah.
Because they're so busy focused on how great we do what we do.
Right. I'm with you 100%.
So
I'm just glad you found
and I do think
my way of thinking.
I think that's a valid point to talking about designing your show. Quit wishing.
Yeah.
And figure out who you are.
Oh, that's the mantra.
What you have.
Quit wishing and start working. That needs to be our bumper sticker.
There you go. Look at us.
Quit wishing and start working.
Awesome. So I'm still amazed that, in the spring semester, we're already behind the 8 ball if we haven't started thinking about this. And I don't want to put any weight on anybody, but if you haven't started, let's start thinking, because August is too late.
Yeah.
July's too late. June's too late.
If you haven't panicked yet, this is the time to panic.
If you haven't panicked, this is your warning.
This is your warning. Panic. Well, Star Trek. Yeah. This is time to go off.
And I'm sure you're mentally shifting from concert consulting to marching consulting in your brain, because that's where we are, right?
I'm already studying scores and MP3 files.
Awesome. Well, man, I tell you this as much as I can. Number one, I love you, just to make it awkward. And
love you too, man.
also, I appreciate so much that you're willing to, I was going to say regurgitate. That probably doesn't sound like the best way to put it. That you're willing to share all of the things that have shaped you into a successful person. And just, I'm encouraging everybody out there. We talk about mentors and we talk about coaching and I have a sign. It's right here, actually. And it says there's no lack of knowledge out there, just a shortage of asking for help.
Yeah.
And I put that there so I can see it all the time. I don't have to be the smartest guy. I just can't be scared to say help.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you being a helper.
Oh, you bet.
Hey, man, have a beautiful week. Sun's starting to shine more. It's getting a little bit warmer.
Yeah.
And we're both skinny enough now that we don't have to go, oh, God, the sun.
Yeah. I could get really gross on that, but we won't get there.
Just let it go. All right, Mike, have a great week, brother.
All right, we'll see you later. Bye.